I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, and I'm located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Monroe, Washington. And welcome to Wheel Talk. Okay.
Started.
Sweet. Okay.
All right. So let's get started. Okay, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about another portion in the Ways to Sell series, where we kind of break down ways that we can sell our work. This could apply to we're potters, obviously, so it's probably going to be more relevant and what we could speak to as potters. But, ways to sell your work through consignment, through like shops and boutiques and whatnot. A lot of my focus, some of my focus the last probably 3 years or so of selling has been like reaching out to shops to be able to sell when I'm not, at a show and stuff. So I do consignment frequently, and it's been picking up speed since I started. So that's kind of where my expertise falls in relation to this.
Yeah.
And Becca, do you do any consignment work? I know you do wholesale, but
I refuse to do consignment work. so I'm on a totally different spectrum than Ryan in that regard, because
when did you do it? Did you do it when you first started?
Yeah, I did a few consignment stores when I first started. The reason that I don't like it is because it's really, really confusing with bookwork. It is a whole kind of separate. You have to separately categorize it within your taxes. You have to keep up with it, which I'm horrible at. And they usually take, I don't know, I feel like, when you wholesale versus consign, when you wholesale, you're giving the pieces to them and they can figure out what they want to do with it. And it's out of your hands. Once it leaves your hands, it's done. And you get the check and you're kaputs. And then when you're consigning, though, you're continuously involved in that process. And I don't like that.
Yeah, it's a little more nurturing and
totally.
Stuff. You're not so... Okay, your problem now.
Exactly, yeah. So
did you stop with that intention, or did you stop because you couldn't keep up and it was taking away inventory from stuff that you could be selling otherwise?
Well, I actually never consigned a ton, mostly because I got advice very early on not to consign. So, I consigned at a few places, and then it was hard to get products down to them because I was in Washington, and the place I was selling was in Oregon. And then some of the local places, I just, it's just easier to do wholesale. So I was at one place for a fair amount of time, but then it kind of just fizzled out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something that, based on your location, you're in Monroe, Washington, which is not a big city or anything.
No.
So the options for you to consign are probably not very large. So you almost have to go somewhere larger like Seattle or something like that.
Right.
And then it's is it worth your gas? And if you've got to ship the things or whatever, it adds up.
And and I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to give it to you. Another thing that I kind of internally think is there's something to be said about somebody who owns a shop or a boutique that has the money up front to do wholesale. They're not putting any money out to do consignment. So, and I totally get it. We've all been there. I couldn't wholesale stuff right now. I don't have the money, but it's really encouraging and kind of it's almost a guarantee, With consignment, you never totally know if they're going to sell your stuff or not. And with wholesale, it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Right.
So that's my one thing, too. My last thing.
But I would say alternatively, you do know if they sell it or not because you get a check or you get an itemized thing of what's sold if it's consignment. If it's wholesale, I have no idea if they sold it. unless they give me some kind of documentation after the fact that they sold my wholesale things. But I don't really care at that point whether they sold them or not, because they already paid me for them.
Exactly. So yeah.
But okay, so the way we frame this, we did the pros and cons like we did last episode for art shows. I started it with details about like what we consider consignment, and I'll just kind of go through some of these and kind of what a typical consignment agreement or what we mean by that. So you kind of decided on an agreement to display and sell your work in their shop. You know, they're going to collect a percentage of it. Typically, the ones that I've done have ranged from 30% to the shop and 70% to me, to 40% to the shop, 60% to me. That's the majority of mine. And then if you're in like nicer galleries and stuff, they'll take 50%, and then you'll keep 50%. So that's pretty much the same as like a wholesale ordering.
Yeah.
So it's like
That's standard.
So if you got that option, like, should you just sell it outright or should you consign it? Because it's kind of doesn't make sense to do one or the other, depending on what you need. And so they take a percentage of it, and that percentage is, you know, paying for things to keep their business open. Like their employees, they have utilities, they have to keep the lights on. They're going to market your stuff, or, you know, they've got a website and all that. You know, they might have an online shop that they got to update with your stuff in it. So that's usually kind of what that 40 or 50% goes toward. You know, if they've got to ship your stuff, or if they've got to package it or whatever, you know, they've got bags and packaging and all that stuff that they've got to account for in their expenses too. So that's kind of what I see that percentage is going toward. They're going to handle the point of sale transaction with the customer. They collect the sales tax on it and pay it, and keep track of inventory when things are sold. Hopefully they're pretty good about that.
Right. That was nice.
And they send you a check, or you pick it up monthly. Typically it's monthly. Or you know, maybe they'll carry it over if you sold like one thing or whatever. And then, you know, you'll get a check the month after, or like a month past when they were sold. And you kind of discuss with them about your relationship, you know, what you decide you want to keep in the inventory, what you want stocked. They can go back and forth with you about like what they want in your shop, if they want something specific only for them. So it brings customers to their shop more, that they can't get anywhere else from you. And yeah, that's pretty much what I mean by consignment. And yeah, this could be for you. You could already be selling consignment. If I left anything off, let us know. But that's kind of what we're going off of. And like I said, I sell in, I'm trying to think, probably 5 places I consign my work in. And yeah. So the furthest place from me is about 30 minutes north.
Okay.
So they're all super drivable, and each one's a little different. You're going to realize when you talk with the shop owner, some of them are super detailed and organized. Some of them are less organized, and they don't consign very much. So they're not super up on, you know, letting you know when things sell exactly and sending you itemized lists and all that kind of thing. So you'll kind of get the feel of, you know, who's better at that, and, you know, consistently getting an email when something comes in, or when, you know, a check's ready for you or whatever. But yeah, so each one's a little different. You can kind of pick and choose, and you'll kind of get a feel when you're going through kind of negotiations and talking about what they're kind of looking for. You'll kind of get a feel for sort of what their business flow is going to be like if you work with them. So
cool.
So we can go ahead and go into some of the pros. And what I like about it is, you know, you can think of it as your own little like brick and mortar. Like you've got a piece of a brick and mortar shop that you don't have to manage, and they keep it open to customers for whatever hours they're open. and you don't have to be there. So, if you don't have a shop of your own, if you're just making stuff in your studio, you do this part-time. If you do this full-time and you can't be at a gallery or a brick and mortar to sell your stuff, like Becca's got a brick and mortar, so she can have people come to her shop at her hours when she's physically there to sell her work.
I ironically, I forgot actually. I kind of lied to you earlier. I actually do technically consign somewhere, unintentionally, I suppose. One of my really good friends is opening an ice cream shop. She just opened an ice cream shop, and they really needed stuff to fill it with. So we're actually putting all of my retail into their ice cream shop because it's a sundries area, and I actually have no idea what percentage I get. It's more to like.
What do you mean all of your retail? Do you mean like you're not going to have any in your shop?
I'm not going to have any pottery. Like, yeah, what? I know. That seems like so stupid, but okay, yeah,
why?
Right. So Ryan's about to get mad at me.
Because you don't want to sell it.
No. It's because there's 2 reasons, actually, or maybe 3. First, I have paint your own pot at my shop, and I've tried to put a retail section in the front, out in the front that's open for people that are kind of like walker-bys, and the paint your own pot customers get extremely confused when they see the really cool glazing of my pottery, and they're like, how can I do that? And I'm like, you can't. And it became such an issue that I was having to tell people like every single time, and they were getting kind of mad that they couldn't paint it like what mine looks like. And then so then I hid it in the back, and then it was kind of schmeh. It was semi-popular, but not really. And the new ice cream shop really needs to be filled, and also I want to like promote her stuff. And so it's a really good way to kind of like move people around Little Town Monroe. So
yeah,
it's actually kind of a win-win for everybody. So that's my quote unquote one consignment shop. Like I said, I don't know how much they're charging me, but I think it's.
But they're still gonna, like, if customers buy something from you, like a flash sale or whatever, they would still pick it up at your shop.
Yeah.
Or
so yeah.
Can people reach out to you to get it from you directly?
Yeah, they could if they wanted to. Yeah, and so I've been kind of like running into this issue where I've not had any stock at the store, my store, because I've been so focused on putting it in Leavenworth, and I'm treating Maybe's Place, that's the ice cream place that I'm talking about, and treating Maybe's Place kind of like a wholesale account where they gave me a whole list of stuff to do. Like, they gave me the list of what they want, and I made it. I just didn't get paid for it. So it's kind of a weird pseudo consignment wholesale situation.
Yeah.
So, and it's actually gotten me to like work a little bit harder making my stuff. So that's good. Anyway, I just wanted to clear the air.
Yeah. I would suspect that since they're a new shop that you would probably get a decent percentage, like probably 70% or something like that.
I think so. Well, also they're friends, so.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Cool. Okay, moving on.
Cool. So another pro I had for selling there would be they handle all the sales tax and like credit card fees and all that kind of thing. So you don't have to worry about that stuff.
You still have to
sales can happen.
You still have to report the sales tax. Like, you have to report the sales that you sold to them. I can talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I report that stuff as like income and all that kind of thing. But I'm not paying sales tax on that thing because the customer paid sales tax to that business and they paid the sales tax before I got my check. So they handle all that kind of thing, the bookkeeping part of it for the taxes and tax man. Sales can happen any day that they are open. So like it goes back to having your own shop, they can happen whenever customers come by. You don't have to schedule a time to be there and, potentially take away your attention while you're doing something or whatever. Another pro, I don't know how common this is, but I mean, a lot of the like bigger galleries do this. Like they offer online sales of their inventory. So some of them have brick and mortars, and then they also offer like the same thing online. Or if it's like a Charlie Cummings gallery that's like a big name gallery online for pottery, they sell online, like I think almost exclusively. They're probably going to sell mostly that way. And if so, they would handle all the packing and shipping stuff for you. So, if you're selling, you don't have to do that. Unless you have to like ship stuff to them. I guess you would have to handle that, but that's kind of a one-time thing. All right, so let's see some more pros. I see it as a way to spread some work around town that people can see it on a more frequent basis. Maybe you don't live in that area of town. You don't reach those customers at shows because you don't have a show in that area, or maybe you just want more people to see it, and you can't physically do that at shows and stuff. Maybe they see me at a show, and it's nice to have them say like, "Oh, I've seen your work at this area. Do you sell work at this shop?" She's like, "I think I got it at Indigenous. Do you sell work there?" And I was like, yeah, I do. And I'm hearing that more frequently now, that people say, "Oh, I saw your work here." And it's nice because I think the proximity and the amount of times that someone sees something, the more familiar they are with it. And then also they can, branch that experience of seeing it in the shop. Obviously something made them remember it. And then they see my stuff in person, so they can actually, see more of a variety or more colors or whatever. And then they could see me in person to see like what I look like and, my personality and stuff like that. So they can actually talk to me directly instead of just seeing my stuff in a shop that has nothing behind it, or, a little like card about me or whatever on it. So, I'm getting that more frequently now, which is nice. Another one, it kind of goes back to the brick and mortar thing, that there's hours. So if someone wants something like spur of the moment, or they have a wedding to go to or something, or they have some event that they want to get a gift at, they can look up your website and say like, "Oh, I sell at these shops. I don't have a show coming up this weekend." So you can go to any of these shops around town. They can figure out what shops are close to them and go and check out your selection. And, like I said, it kind of makes me feel like I have a little piece of multiple brick and mortars around town that people can go find me. And, it just gives them another option to be able to find your work without the hassle of like, "Oh, I got to reach out to him. Is he going to contact me back through email? What's the best way to contact him?" All that kind of thing that, it slows a customer down from, being able to buy something. And another one, which is a part that I really like, is that if you really enjoy the making process and you have a lot of inventory and it's not a hit to your inventory to have it sitting somewhere in hopes of selling, maybe that's for you. Maybe you just like making a lot of stuff. You got plenty of stuff and you have inventory to spare. So that's why I have my stuff in like 5 different places around town, because I have so much backstock and I can't sell it quick enough. So yeah, I don't mind having 25 or 30 pieces at this place. And honestly, it frees me up of some stuff. I get to kind of put it out of my mind, deliver it, and I'm kind of on to the next thing of making. That's why I feel like Becca would be good at that, but she can't keep up with her inventory and like making process enough that if you could keep up with making and you had backstock, would you be more open to it?
I'd be fucking invincible if I could keep up with my backstock.
Like, if you had so much backstock, what would you prefer to do with it? Would you rather like have it at different shops so that you can spread your kind of brand and people seeing you, or would you prefer?
I think I'd prefer to sell online.
Do more online sales so you have stuff sitting?
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to sell online. No, okay. I like keeping my. I would sell wholesale. What I've really enjoyed actually doing recently is, like, I had a lady up in Leavenworth, where I do my regular show, and she wanted to buy wholesale from me, and she literally just came into the booth and picked out all that she wanted and then took it back to the shop. And that
That's
was
great.
awesome. I know an old potter that he used to do wholesale, and the best techniques that he ever used for wholesale was he would just drive around to different stores in like Oregon or whatever with a van full of pots and say, hey, I have a bunch of pottery in the back of my van. You want to see it? And if you hand it to them and they touch it, and you just say, this is the reject pile, this is the accept pile, and you can decide if you want these later. You know, he said 90% of the times they would just buy them out from you. I've always wanted to do wholesale like that. I've always wanted to do wholesale like that. This is a guy that got so big that he was selling in the Coldwater Creek catalog, and he literally had to buy a ram press because he was doing so much inventory. Insane.
That's
Insane.
nuts.
That's how I want to do wholesale when I get old.
Door-to-door wholesale pot
That's
salesman.
how I want to do wholesale when I grow up. Yeah.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
I'll tell you what, that little snippet of how she shopped in my booth was pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah. Well, honestly, my first, dipping my toe into wholesale was at my very first art show. And a woman came that she owns a shop in Ashland, Kentucky, and which is kind of a small town, like 2 hours south of me or whatever. And she buys wholesale from another potter that was at the show I was at, and he introduced me to her, and he was like, yeah, we sell some of our stuff there. And she just goes around to these different shows and kind of looks for people to wholesale. And she bought 15 of my things at the show and had the wholesale certificate and, bought however much. And she was like, I really like your stuff. And she bought all these things.
Yeah.
And then she reached out to me a year later and got some more. I mean, it took forever for her to sell out of them, but hey, it was like a wholesale, and I kind of got my feet wet and figured out what I needed to do, and setting a minimum amount and all that kind of thing. So that was a cool experience. And she did the same thing where she was just at my booth, just picking things out.
I think honestly, and we've been going through the pros and cons of consignment, but I feel like wholesale and consignment are so similar, except for maybe two different things. In the way that you. In the way the way it's framed, yeah. Looking at all these and it's like I feel that way about all my wholesale accounts, I think that either wholesale or consignment is such a great way to get your work out and get it into shops. It gives you so much exposure.
Right. And how much should, I don't know, some people get a little butthurt about the 40 or 50%, and they're like, why am I giving so much away?
Get over it.
My work has so much more value than that. But if you can I think if you can keep up with the process and you can make enough stuff and you're not worried about the backstock part of it, if you can keep up with the making and you have enough, then I don't think it should be a concern that you're worried about the 40% that they're
Here's
taking.
my advice to anybody who is concerned about 40 to 50%. Get over yourself first. And that's my hard truth. Get over yourself and make your prices across the board. Be able to go down 50% and still make money. $1's a dollar. That's the advice that I've always gotten from my friends that are in business, and also the guy that taught me how to do business is $1 is $1. If you can make $2 off of 50 items, that's $100 that you've made, right? And say those 50 items take 2 minutes to make each, you're making $100 off of 100 minutes, or whatever. I don't know if I did the math right, but what I'm saying is you have to price your pieces out so that you make money at every single level. You have to be, these people that sell at galleries exclusively, they price their pieces accordingly so that they can make money selling it through the gallery. You know, the gallery takes a certain percentage. There's a reason that mug is $90. It's because they're getting $45 from that. You know, it's you cannot, like, everybody thinks my prices are low, but I do so much quantity that I'm making money off of that, you know? That you just have to price your pieces accordingly. You know, if you think that your pieces are too low for a wholesale, then up all your prices and figure out what price you
Right.
feel comfortable selling at 50%. Because that's the price that you need to feel comfortable at if you're going to get any business other than doing shows and selling through yourself online.
Right. And you shouldn't be pricing it higher because you're getting it
No.
consigned either. Because they're taking 40%, you don't want to up your price and say, well, I still want to get the same amount
No.
that I would sell at a show because they're taking 40% of
Your
it.
prices, yeah.
You're getting value. They're getting 40%. You're getting 40% of value from them whether you see it. A lot of that value and whatnot is not as tangible
Yeah.
as you might want it to be.
Well, just think of it this way, too. Like, if you go to a show and you're selling at a show and you've taken a whole day off of work, you've paid $200, up to $200, $300, $400 for the show. You have your bag price, you have your square price, you have all of these things that add up. You are essentially selling your price for wholesale out the door. All the additional costs though are, you know, on the front end of the table. They're not on the back end like the wholesale is, you know? So
Right. And you see it as like free because you're like, oh, well, it's me.
yeah, it's not
free.
free. Your time,
But it's
your
your time
time
and your
is not
effort
free. And so you have to think of it that way. If you can't go to a show and take a whole day off of work and sell your pieces and make money, then you can't wholesale for 50%.
Right.
Up your prices.
Yeah. And I would be much happier giving up 20 or 30 pieces. Like, that's not anything to me because I make
Yeah.
a lot of pieces, but you know, giving 20 to 30 pieces to someone to sell and you're kind of trying it out. They pick what they think they will sell in their shop and what's going to fit. Some things they pick are things that they like personally, but their customers might not like. So you're going to kind of get an idea, and they're going to get an idea of like what's not going to sell.
Totally.
And then you can kind of work around it and see what happens. And you don't have to put that effort in to
Nope.
figure that out. Like at a show and waste time to do that. You kind of give it to them and then let them kind of run with it.
Yeah, and they have a totally certain set, like any consignment or wholesale shop has a very certain set of customers, and that can give you great feedback to what is selling and what is not.
Right. Some shops I sell certain things at, and some shops I sell completely other things
Yeah.
at. And, yeah. All right. So the last pro that I had, which actually got more relevant in the last couple months or so, is the opportunity to participate in other like special sales or pop-up shops or events that are going on that those shops host. And it's ways to get those shops more foot traffic, to see your work like physically in their shop, as well as to like drive some sales quickly. One of those that I did recently was an anniversary sale at Silk Road Textiles in Cincinnati. It's a textile shop that sells my mugs and a few yarn bowls. And they were, you know, we collaborated and we were like, hey, we have our 7th anniversary coming up. We would love to have you here. Let's collaborate. Let me do a demo and I'll have a 10 by 10 booth. It didn't cost me anything. They took 20% of my sales. So it was kind of like a light consignment, but I was physically there, so I'm able to sell it myself and like drive those sales because I can talk about the process and all that kind of thing. So I sold better at that show than I sold at another art show the last like 2 weekends. Like I sold better than each of those different art shows. And I think it's because it's so contextual. It's very focused to their customer base, and I can like tailor it. Like I never would have 30 yarn bowls out at a show ever. I usually have like 2 because it's so niche that people don't know what they are. So being able to participate in sales like that are very niche to that group is going to help you, build your customer base and also give more personality behind like who you are as a maker, that they've seen your stuff in their shop, but you can actually like physically be there and talk to your process and all that stuff. And another shop recently had like a sidewalk sale where they were selling seconds. So they were like, hey, we have our makers mess up. There's problems along the way, and they have seconds. So they're steeply discounted. We have some giveaways and door prizes and things to get people in the shop for the second sale. And those are always cool because like I'm totally fine with giving them a bunch of pots to get rid of. And then some of them have frequent like monthly events to get people out to their shopping district or whatever. Like that the second sale shop has like Walk on Woodburn, which is like a monthly thing that they have during the summers. And then the other one that's in Bellevue has like a Final Friday that they have every Friday night to get people out and about in the shopping district and eating dinner and stuff like that.
I think it's
a lot of those areas, if they're pretty popular, do that.
I think it's funny that you have a Bellevue and we have a Bellevue. You have Bellevue, Kentucky, and we have Bellevue, Washington.
Right.
Okay.
I think there's Bellevues everywhere. So. All right. You want to go into the cons? Do you want to read some of the cons? I'm sure that you can. You said you can relate to some of these for wholesale, so we might as well dig in.
Okay, so cons are no connection to the potential customers' buyers, which especially I would say you have more connection being consignment as opposed to wholesale, because a lot of the time with consignment they have your like bio and they have a little blip about the artist and sometimes they contact you later. But
do your wholesale clients not do that? They don't have a little. They don't show who you're.
No,
who
not
you
usually.
Are.
Mm-mm. So that's a con. I guess, or it could be a good. It depends on if you want to talk to people or not. And then customers buying your work around town is more likely to be remembered that they bought it from the shop versus buying from me. Totally true. Totally true. So, they're going to remember the place that you bought it. And then, but, if you have a unique style, I guess that can help with that. But for sure, knowing, that's a con. Definitely. Like,
yeah, I think the customers that have come up to me, they say, I think I've seen your work somewhere. And they're not going to remember the name because the name is just a nameplate right next to the work in the shop if that shop has that. Otherwise, it's just work that's in the shop and they just know they got it at Indigenous.
Totally. I'm actually selling at a store 2 blocks away from the show that I do every weekend on the weekends in Leavenworth. And so she has a bunch of my stuff and people keep coming through and they're like, oh, I think I saw your stuff in a store. I was like, yes, you did. It's kind of a conflict of interest, but
that's funny.
It's good. It's still okay. Sales may be harder to obtain because you aren't there to discuss your process or show your face. That's true. It's a harder sell. So, I would say the thing about if you're going to consign or if you're going to wholesale, especially if you're going to consign, is you make sure your stuff is on point. Foot's trimmed, craft there, no seconds, no S cracks, no like little hidden things that you think you can get past somebody.
Don't save all your best pieces for your personal show because you're going to be there to stick up for it and think like, oh well, I'm just giving it to the shop to see if they can sell it, so I can give them like slightly iffy stuff that I'm not so proud of. You need to have
integrity in your work if you give it to a different business, because not only are you trying to make yourself look good, you're trying to make them look good. So I know shops that have actually dropped wholesalers because they kept on giving them like things that were questionable. And even if it might not be questionable to you, because some people are stubborn and they are like, I like the character of this. I would encourage you to get a second opinion from somebody who, you know, who is critical of work. Like, get a critique from somebody, because you won't know until, you see that. I've been in shops where there was for sure pieces that were consigned, and I'm totally that like snob that like picks it up and I'm like, this is cracked. And then I put it down. But definitely take integrity in your work, and that will, because it's a total con, like, to not be there, because I've totally talked my way into selling a bowl with something wrong with it, as opposed to a seconds bowl. They're like, oh, but I love seconds. It is
Right.
true that people love seconds. They love to have quirky things about pieces, but that is not true that your wholesalers love that. So, or your the shops that you're selling at.
Exactly.
Uh,
So, and some owners know that, like the Indigenous Gallery where I sell, they are familiar enough with pottery that they see something where like there's no glaze in a section or whatever, or there's a little bit of glaze that broke away, but it's still glossy, so it's technically like food safe, but it doesn't look as good. So they kind of frame it as, hey, if a customer is potentially going to have an issue with it, then we're just not going to accept it, and we're going to have you give us a replacement before it gets in front of a customer.
And do a once over.
Some places that are familiar with that medium will
do a once over while you're delivering it. You know what I do at the plant shop that I sell to is I have to take everything out of my bins, because I need the bins back, the like bread carts that I have. So while I'm taking everything out, I'm doing a once over on all the pieces. This is like the 4th time that I've checked these pieces. And even the last time I was dropping something off, I noticed a little bowl that had a imperfection on it, and then another bowl that had a tiny little crack that I hadn't noticed. And I pulled those, and I was like, I'll bring you 2 other ones when I come back. So do a 4th check, 5th check when you're dropping it off, so that you can make sure that you're good to go.
Right.
Let's see. If you don't make a lot of work, this may be taking away too much from your inventory. That's true. And you don't want too little stuff at the shop. If they don't have enough quantity, then they'll probably not sell. You want to make sure that there's like a minimum amount that you're giving to the stores.
Yeah, it's going to catch their eye if there's enough stuff, and then they can say, oh, I really like that color. They're like, but I don't need a vase or whatever, so they can, look at some other pieces that are close to it. And then they can compare the prices and figure out, like, I really like this, but it's not my price point, so let's find something cheaper that I can get. It's still my price point, but it's still the glaze I like or whatever.
Also, having pairs and stuff and, like, consistent pieces is good. If you have cups, make sure there's at least 4 of each one so that people can buy sets. Let's see. It takes time to get a steady check. This is true. You have to have patience, especially when you're selling at a new store.
Exactly.
When I started selling at some stores, this applies to Consignment and the other. When I started selling at new stores, it takes a little while to kind of catch up speed. And, but you'll get there eventually, and you have to, with getting a steady paycheck, you have to keep them up, like, stocked up. So that's important. Shops take a big percentage. We've already talked about that. They need to make money too. Oh, hey, Ryan, what do you price I guess that's not true. See, that's the difference between wholesale and consignment, is that wholesale, with consignment, you price your pieces and give them to the stores.
Exactly.
And with wholesale, you sell them at a certain price, and they are obligated to sell them at the prices that you choose. So, if you have a contract, that is. And then, if you have a contract. Harder to get customer feedback with your work. What resonates the most with them? I think that's self-explanatory.
Yeah. So if you're at a show and they see something, they pick it up or whatever, if they say they don't like something or whatever, you miss all of that because you're not physically there to sell it. Or they ask a question about something or whatnot, you're not there to speak to
Right.
that. So, you don't have that one-on-one with a customer. One more thing about the steady check. So in relation to my shops, some of them just like didn't sell at all. And it was a lower percentage. It was like a 70-30 split, but the location is not that great. It's kind of in it's not a part of town where they like walk around a lot. That was one in Louisville, and stuff sat forever, and it was the same stock. So it's like, and then they renegotiated, and we're like, okay, we're going to start selling online. We're going to try to get more inventory so that we can like a fresh inventory of work. And I just decided not to re-up and do it because I was like, okay, maybe this is not a good location for me to sell, and is it worth my time to upkeep that? And then others, like, I started selling there maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been starting to get a check almost monthly with them as of about maybe 6 months ago. Like, you can't expect to get a check the first month after you put stuff in there. You can't be like, okay, I delivered stuff and I didn't get any sales.
Unless your stuff is
they have
freaking
so much
bomb.
other stuff. Yeah.
Your stuff is bomb.
I mean, a lot of those kind of shops have a lot of things that
Totally.
they sell. So you're sitting alongside purses and textiles and like coasters and whatever other decorative things that they have there. You can't expect to sell something every single month out of the
So
gate.
true. Because they're still trying to figure out where to put your
yeah,
pieces that makes it work, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just gotta be patient with it, and I'm starting to get a check more monthly. Even if it's like a $30 check, it might seem like, oh man, I've had my stuff in there forever and I just got a $30 check. Or, I've got a check for like $16 before. It's like, all right, I sold something. Like, it's whatever. So you gotta, just roll with it. It's gonna take time.
Yeah.
And that's why I would say, just reach out to a few of them, and you might get some no's, you might get some, we're not looking for anybody. You might get no response at all. What I was kind of in a frenzy or whatever to reach out to a bunch of places back like 2 or 3 years ago, like I said, and I was reaching out through social media. Like if they had an Instagram, if they had a Facebook, I was reaching out to say, hey, I'm a local handmade pottery, and I would like to partner with you because I think my stuff would go well in your shop. Would you be willing to meet with me to discuss consignment or wholesale? So something like that is super like low effort and low risk kind of thing. All they gotta say is no, or they can come back and say, hey, we have a form or an application form that we look over monthly for our new people, and we'd love for you to fill that out, and we'll keep in touch. So that kind of thing. Or you could just say, hey, I'd love to have you come by. Our owner who does that will be in next week or whatever. Would you be able to bring 10 or 15 things in next week and meet with them on this day or whatever? So stuff like that, it makes it so much simpler. You don't have to go find a contact email on a website and submit a form on their contact thing. You can reach them directly through like social media. I mean, it might seem like less professional, but like when you're just feeling things out, I don't see that as a bad thing to just reach out to them.
Yeah, and tell them how they can
It doesn't
benefit
have to be
as a
super
business
formal.
too. That's like the
Right. Don't say like, I want to sell my stuff in your shop.
Say,
hey, frame it like, I think we would make a good partnership. Or I think my stuff would.
I was walking around your shop and I noticed that the color schemes of your store complement the pottery that I make, and they might go very well, and you might have some sales. Because after all, it's a business. They want to make money. So you have to be up to par with their store as well as them being up to par with you.
Yeah. And find some don't feel weird to reach out to some niche places that maybe they don't sell pottery, but maybe it's like in your realm of maybe it fits your vibe or something. I mean, there's some shops in like downtown Cincinnati that are like, I want to say like Queen City Alchemy is one. It's kind of like it's kind of got like lotions and like air plants and that kind of stuff. I don't sell there, but like there's some people that like it fits that vibe that it's like, oh, I can see their work in this shop.
I've sold at the...
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
I've sold at general stores. Like, I can't remember, it was in upstate New York. It was a general, like... Yeah, like a general store, like a five and dime kind of store, but like not a five and dime, obviously. And a feed store. I sold at a feed store once. And then the Boston Tea Room, which I thought was an actual tea room. It's not. It's a psychic place, which doesn't make sense. But they ordered like wine glasses and stuff. This was when Etsy had wholesale. But yeah, I had like a Honest Weight Feed Company. Food Co-op, that's what it was. Honest Way Food Company. It was and they sold my stuff. They sold my stuff a fair amount too, actually. Yeah, just
nice.
It's weird the places that want your crap.
Yeah, and some of them, maybe when you reach out, maybe you plan on consignment, but they only wholesale or something like that, and maybe it'll give you an option to wholesale. Yeah, one of the shops in Bellevue, Kentucky, talking about Bellevue, Ampersand Gallery in Bellevue, they opened their shop maybe a year and a half ago, and Matthew there reached out. I think I reached out to him because I saw some other pottery there, and we met up. He came to the studio, looked at my work, and he was super open to both options. He was like, I'm willing to wholesale or consign. It's up to you what you want to do.
What'd you choose?
So, being a new gallery, I didn't know what was going to sell. And honestly, when I wholesale, I feel a little guilty because I want to make sure that it sells. I don't want to wholesale something to get in and get out kind of thing, where I just take the money and run, and the selling part is their problem. So, going into that, I did the wholesale for the mugs, which was a selection of 10 or 15 mugs, and then we consigned the rest of the work because I didn't want to have him on the hook for buying all this stuff wholesale, and then it'd be a bad relationship because the stuff doesn't sell, and then it's kind of like on him to,
for sure,
he can't give the work back because he already bought it, and stuff like that. So he gave the option, and now in the last 6 months or so, he actually changed everything over to wholesale. So he's buying everything outright. He bought the remaining stock that I had, and then he bought some more stuff that's brand new, that's specific to what kind of things he wanted to stock in the shop.
I like wholesale because while you're talking about that, is that when you're nervous and stuff, I never get nervous because I will give guidance to shop owners, but typically shop owners know what market they want to have. And so they choose the products according to what they want. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I'll give like advice, say, hey, the wine glasses are my best selling item right now. Or what have you, or these are my best selling colors right now. But I do enjoy the shop owners just like taking ownership in what pieces they want to see in their own stores.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I think this about wraps it up for ways to sell your stuff consignment. I'm guessing there will be some overlap when we talk about wholesale. I think there might be. From what Becca was talking about.
Yeah. It's kind of like...
We got a little foreshadowing here.
It's kind of like they're like one and the same, but not really. So they do overlap.
Yeah. I think the mentality is different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you. Have a great night.
And,
or day, or
we're
morning.
out. Yeah.
Okay, bye. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. You can reach Ryan at RD Ceramics on Instagram, and me at 5 Lines Pottery Studio on Instagram. We look forward to continuing this podcast, and we are having so much fun. I hope you continue to listen and remember to share it with your friends.